to Egypt now, where officials have revealed the discovery of a long corridor inside the last of the 7 wonders of the ancient world still standing, the Great Pyramid of Giza.
2 satellites, 420 miles above Earth, silent, cold, screaming across the sky at 17,000 miles per hour, directly over the most studied real estate in all of human history. And what came back from those satellites in March of 2025 is going to make you question everything you were ever taught about ancient Egypt. Not because the data was corrupted, not because the instruments failed, but because what the radar was showing them shouldn't exist. Not at that depth, not at that scale, not with that kind of geometric precision. For 4,500 years, the pyramids of Giza have sat in the desert, studied, measured, photographed from every conceivable angle. We thought we had them figured out. We were wrong, because here's what the satellites found. A structure so massive, so precisely engineered, so deep beneath the desert floor, that the researchers who discovered it reached for a word nobody expected to use out loud about ancient Egypt. They called it a city, an underground city, sitting in total darkness, 2 kilometers beneath the sand. And once you understand what's actually down there, the pyramids above will never look the same way again. Here's what we're covering today. First, I'm going to walk you through exactly what was found, layer by layer. The details are almost impossible to process. Second, the technology behind it, and why this is not pseudoscience. This is the same radar technology used by NASA and defense agencies worldwide. Third, I'm going to take you into the legend of the Hall of Records, an ancient mystery that has haunted archaeology for centuries. And why this discovery just made that legend look a lot less like myth and a lot more like a set of GPS coordinates. And fourth, why Egypt will not let anyone near this site. Because there is a question buried at the center of all of this that nobody in power seems willing to answer. Stay close, because by the time we're done, you'll understand why this story broke the internet in March 2025 and then went quiet almost immediately. That silence, that disappearance from mainstream headlines, that might actually be the most interesting part of this entire story. Let's start with what we've been told. The pyramids at Giza were built around 2500 BC, commissioned by 3 pharaohs, Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure, as royal tombs, monuments to death, built by laborers using ramps, wooden sledges, and raw human muscle. That is the official story. It has been the official story for over 100 years. And look, parts of it hold up. We've found the workers' villages. We've found administrative papyri describing pyramid logistics. There's real archaeological evidence for the builders. That's not in dispute. But here's what most people were never taught. Beneath the desert floor at Giza, there have always been anomalies, things that don't fit neatly, things that mainstream Egyptology keeps quietly filing away under unexplained. In the 1990s, geophysicist Dr. Thomas Dobecki used seismic equipment around the base of the Great Sphinx. His team found evidence of a rectangular chamber, approximately 9 by 12 meters, sitting 5 meters below the Sphinx's front paws. The Egyptian government halted the investigation before it could go further. In 2016, a team using cosmic ray muon technology, the same technique used to image the melted core of the Fukushima nuclear reactor, found a massive cavity inside the Great Pyramid itself, 272 feet underground. Egypt acknowledged it, and then the research slowed. And in 2024, just 1 year before the discovery, we're about to discuss archaeologists uncovered an L-shaped underground structure near the Great Pyramid, unknown, uncharted, buried less than 7 feet below the surface. In other words, Giza keeps producing surprises. The official story keeps colliding with things it wasn't supposed to find. But then 2 scientists pointed a completely different kind of instrument at the middle pyramid, and the surprises stopped being small. Professor Corrado Malanga, University of Pisa, Italy. Dr. Filippo Biondi, University of Strathclyde, Scotland. These were not fringe theorists. Malanga is a chemist and academic researcher. Biondi is an engineer who spent years using satellite radar to monitor the structural integrity of dams and bridges from space. Serious industrial work, not speculation. The technology they used is called synthetic aperture radar (SAR). In August 2022, they published a peer-reviewed paper in the journal Remote Sensing, using it to study the internal structure of the Great Pyramid. In that paper, they identified known internal features confirming the method worked. Then they pushed deeper. Here's how SAR actually works without the jargon. Satellites orbit 420 miles above Earth and emit pulses of microwave energy downward. Those pulses bounce back. Normally, that data is used to map surface features, flood zones, crop patterns, shifting terrain. But Biondi developed something different. He called it synthetic aperture radar Doppler tomography. By combining the radar data with the micro vibrations naturally present in the ground, tremors from distant earthquakes, traffic, wind, tidal forces, he could construct 3D images of what lies underground. Think of a medical MRI scan. The machine doesn't cut into your body. It reads the signals your body emits in a magnetic field and builds a picture from them. Biondi's technique does the same thing, but the body is the entire Giza plateau, and the signals are radar echoes and the whisper of seismic vibration moving through 4,500-year-old bedrock. After years of processing, the team compiled what they describe as a detailed 3D map of the underground structures beneath Khafre's pyramid. Dr. Biondi's conclusion came in a single sentence. We firmly believe the Giza structures are interconnected. The pyramids are merely the tip of the iceberg of a colossal underground infrastructural complex. Tip of the iceberg. Let that sit. And now let me show you layer by layer exactly what that iceberg looks like. Layer 1. Right at the surface. Near the base of the Khafre pyramid, the middle pyramid, the radar detected 5 identical multi-level structures. 5 of them. Same dimensions, same shape. Arranged with what the researchers describe as mathematical precision, connected by straight geometric corridors, not random tunnels, not geological formations. Engineered passageways running between identical engineered structures. That alone would have been extraordinary, but the team looked deeper. Layer 2, going underground. Descending from those 5 surface-level structures, 8 vertical cylindrical wells. Not cracks in the rock, not natural shafts. 8 perfectly circular columns of space, descending straight down into the bedrock. And encircling each well, according to the radar data, are spiral staircases, helical pathways winding down the outside of each shaft as it goes deeper. Now the scale. This is the part you need to picture. Each shaft descends 648 meters. That is 2,126 feet, straight down. The Eiffel Tower stands 330 meters tall. These shafts go almost double that distance underground. The Empire State Building, roof to street, is 443 meters. Still not as deep. To walk from top to bottom of one of these structures, you descend a spiral staircase, the height of 2 Eiffel Towers, going down into the dark. And at the bottom of all 8 shafts, Layer 3, the deepest point. 2 massive cube-shaped chambers, each one 80 meters on every side, 80 meters wide, 80 meters long, 80 meters tall. Each one roughly the footprint of a full city block, sitting in complete darkness at a depth of approximately 2 kilometers below the Giza Plateau. For scale, that depth is equivalent to stacking 4 Burj Khalifas on top of each other pointing downward. Professor Malanga's words, when he looked at what the data was showing him, when we magnify the images, we will reveal that beneath it lies what can only be described as a true underground city. A true underground city, 2 kilometers down, in total darkness, beneath the most famous monuments ever built. And it doesn't stop at Khafre's pyramid. The 2 base chambers the radar data indicates extend under all 3 pyramids: Khufu, Khafre, Menkaure, the entire Giza complex, sitting above a shared underground foundation. So here's the full picture. 3 pyramids on the surface. Below them, 5 structures connected by geometric corridors. Below those 8 spiral shafts, nearly half a mile deep. Below those 2 cube chambers, the size of city blocks. And running through the entire system, what the scans show as channels. Channels that the researchers say resemble a pipeline network, an engineered water system deep underground, built beneath what would one day become the most famous desert on Earth. The total underground complex, by the team's estimate, stretches 2 kilometers beneath the surface. That makes it approximately 10 times the volume of the pyramids themselves. 10 times. The most recognized structures ever built by human hands, apparently just the surface label above something 10 times their size. The water channels are the detail that even the skeptics find difficult to dismiss, because those channels don't just suggest engineering, they suggest a specific time period. Here's what most people have never been taught about the Sahara. 10,000 years ago, it was not a desert. It was a savanna, grasslands, lakes, rivers. Hippopotamuses lived in what is now the Libyan desert. Imagine that. Hippos, wallowing in muddy water, where today there is nothing but cracked earth and sand in every direction. Giraffes roaming the interior of what we now call the Sahara. This period is called the African Humid Period. It ended around 5000 BCE, roughly 2,500 years before the commonly accepted construction date for the pyramids. If there is an underground water pipeline system beneath Giza, a hydraulic infrastructure built when the Sahara was lush and wet. Then the civilization that built it was operating in a completely different Egypt, one where underground water channels made engineering sense, where they would have been functional, not ceremonial. And the pyramids? The pyramids may have been built on top of this system, thousands of years later, by a different civilization. If that's correct, the question of who built the underground complex is no longer about ancient Egypt at all. It's about something that came before. Now, here is where the ancient world enters this story. I want to be careful here because this part has a complicated history. It can tip easily into sensationalism, but it deserves serious attention because it has been sitting in plain sight for a very long time. For thousands of years, across multiple ancient traditions, there has been a story, a persistent, specific story about what lies beneath the Giza Plateau. In the 15th century, the Egyptian historian Al-Makrizi wrote about a legendary king called Surid, who built the pyramids not as tombs, but as vaults, to protect his civilization's accumulated knowledge from a coming great flood, not pharaonic pride. Survival architecture. Herodotus, the Greek historian who visited Egypt around 450 BCE, 2,500 years ago, described underground chambers of such scale that the pyramids above seemed almost incidental. He wrote of a labyrinth beneath the sands, so vast it exceeded every building in Greece combined. And in the 20th century, an American named Edgar Cayce described in precise detail an underground library beneath the Giza Plateau. He called it the Hall of Records. Built around 10,500 BCE, he said, by a civilization that predated Egypt entirely, to preserve their accumulated knowledge before catastrophe erased them. Mainstream archaeology has always dismissed every one of these accounts as myth, but now the Khafre Project team is making a direct connection. They suggest that the two massive cube chambers, their radar detected 80 meters on each side, sitting in darkness 2 kilometers underground, could be exactly what every one of those ancient accounts was describing. Not metaphor. A location. Here's the question that should be sitting uncomfortably with you right now. What if the legends were never wrong? What if the pyramid builders weren't building monuments to the dead? What if they were building the most indestructible markers ever conceived? Structures designed to be impossible to miss, built to last for millennia, pointing downward at something they were protecting. Now we have to be honest, because the Khafre Project has serious critics, and those critics deserve a fair hearing. Professor Lawrence Conyers, University of Denver, one of the world's leading experts in ground-penetrating radar, 30 years of field experience imaging underground features across the globe. He was asked to peer-review the team's original 2022 paper. His verdict was direct. He called the underground city claim a huge exaggeration. His core argument: radar waves weaken as they travel through solid rock. They scatter, absorb, and degrade. In his entire career using the most advanced ground-penetrating equipment available, he has never successfully resolved structures more than about 30 feet below the surface. The idea that satellite-based radar can image structures thousands of feet underground, he says, goes against established physics. Dr. Zahi Hawass, Egypt's most prominent archaeologist and former Minister of Antiquities, was blunter. He called the claims utterly baseless and fake news from an amateur group. He stated clearly that no radar equipment had been used at the Khafre site, no permissions had been granted to this team, and the Egyptian Supreme Council of Antiquities had zero involvement with their research. Other Egyptologists at Liverpool, Yale, and Sydney lined up with similar dismissals, and critically, the Khafre Project has not published its 2025 findings in a peer-reviewed scientific journal. The announcement came through a YouTube press conference and a conference in Bologna. Independent scientists have not formally scrutinized the methodology. That is a real problem. A serious one. Science runs on peer review, and that missing step matters. But here's what I want you to notice. Even Professor Conyers, the most prominent skeptic, told the Washington Times that smaller structures, shafts, and chambers beneath the pyramids are, in his own words, genuinely possible. Not the full underground city, but something. And multiple independent teams, muon, tomography, seismic surveys, ground-penetrating radar, have all found anomalies beneath the plateau using completely different methods. The anomalies keep appearing. The question is only about their size and nature. The Khafre Project may be wrong about the scale, but the something beneath the pyramids appears to be real. So why won't Egypt allow a single borehole? The Khafre Project submitted a formal request to Egyptian authorities for permission to conduct targeted ground investigations, not a full excavation. No cranes, no machinery, no digging teams. A single borehole. one small drill shaft to confirm whether the structures the radar detected actually exist. That request remains unanswered. Now, to be clear, Egypt has entirely legitimate reasons to guard the Giza site. The plateau is fragile. Ancient stone, existing tunnels, 4,500 years of structural history. Unauthorized research could cause irreversible damage. That is responsible stewardship of a World Heritage Site. That's not conspiracy, that's real. But consider the logic. If the radar data shows nothing real, if the underground city is a spectacular misreading of satellite signals, a software artifact, an ambitious mistake, then the fastest way to permanently end this story is to approve a single borehole, drill it, find bedrock, publish the result, case closed, story dead, researchers embarrassed. Instead, silence. A pending request that has received no response. This is not the first time this pattern has appeared at Giza. In the 1990s, a team using ground-penetrating radar detected what appeared to be a rectangular chamber beneath the Sphinx. Egypt halted the investigation. The chamber was never confirmed. It was never definitively denied. It simply went uninvestigated. Decades passed. The same technology that found an anomaly in the 1990s has now found much larger anomalies in 2025. Same response. Restrict access, deny permissions, let the story fade. You can read that pattern two ways. Egypt is protecting an irreplaceable ancient site from unqualified researchers chasing publicity. That is a completely reasonable interpretation. Or something is down there that changes a story. Someone has a significant interest in not changing. Both interpretations can be true at the same time. And until a borehole is drilled, neither one can be ruled out. Here's what actually keeps me up at night about this story. Not the radar data, not the critics, not even the silence from Cairo. It's the scale problem. If the Khafre project is correct, if the underground complex is even half of what they're describing, then we have been looking at the pyramids backwards for 200 years. Every textbook, every documentary, every photograph you've ever seen. The pyramids have always been the story. The whole story. 3 magnificent structures built by an ancient civilization to honor their dead kings. But the research says they were never the story. They were markers, physical arrows, the most indestructible arrows ever constructed, pointing downward into something far larger, far more important, buried beneath them. The most famous buildings in human history. Nothing more than the surface label on something 10 times their size. The ancient Egyptians had a concept they wrote about obsessively. The Duat, the underworld. Not the Western conception of hell, not punishment or fire. The Duat was the hidden dimension beneath the earth, the place of transformation, of knowledge, of power, the realm from which creation itself was believed to emerge. Their entire theology was built around it, and every version of Egyptian cosmology placed the entrance to the Duat somewhere beneath the plateau of Giza. Maybe that was never metaphor. Maybe a civilization, one that came before pharaonic Egypt, one that watched the Sahara transform around it from green to dead and felt the weight of what was coming, built something in the ground, something they needed to protect. And then, thousands of years later, the civilization we call ancient Egypt built the most enduring structures they could imagine directly above it. Not to impress each other, not even to impress the gods, to make sure the location could never be forgotten. The pyramids as a marker, not a tomb but a sign. Here, below this, look here. We just spent 4,500 years staring at the sign and never looked where it was pointing. The Khafre project team says their work continues. More data processing, a planned peer-reviewed publication, a continued request for Egyptian authorities to approve ground investigations. Whether this turns out to be the greatest archaeological discovery in modern history or an elaborate, spectacular misreading of satellite data, we will know the same way, when someone drills a hole. Until then, the underground stays silent. The satellites keep passing overhead. And 2 researchers in Italy and Scotland keep refining a 3D model that either rewrites everything or becomes a cautionary story about the limits of confidence in new technology. But here's the last thing I'll leave you with. Even if the Khafre project is wrong about every single measurement, wrong about the scale, wrong about the depth, wrong about the chambers, the question they've forced onto the table is completely real. We have spent 2 centuries studying the most famous monuments on Earth, primarily from above, and we still do not know what's underneath them. That gap between what we think we know and what we haven't looked for is the most interesting address in archaeology. And the fact that a single borehole could answer it, and that borehole has not been drilled, tells you everything you need to know about why this story refuses to go away. One question in the comments before you go. Should Egypt approve the excavation? Yes or no? I read every single one.